Welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. In this video, I'm going to talk about running third-party stuff that's designed for D&D 5th edition with a brand new game system. So this is a sponsored video. We have a sponsor, Dank Dungeons. They've created a new system called 5B, and we're going to talk about how to use that system to run stuff you may have. Like, for instance, I was just at GaryCon, and I picked up a couple cool things. This right here, a Mag of Holding, which is a Gothic source book, if you will. And I also picked up this adventure here, adventure if you want to call it that, nice big book, Gaxmore, right? So this is by Troll Lords. Again, these are things I haven't had a chance to run yet. And sure, I could run them in BX because I've been running BX forever and I can translate stuff over. But when you are running an adventure from 5e that's written for 5e, there's if you ever run one, there's super specific stuff that's written in there that you have to use a lot of GM fiat to kind of figure out how it would work and stuff. And what's nice about this 5B system is that it's light, like an OSR system, but it's fully mechanically compatible. So what I want to do here is, instead of reading through the system, is I want to show you some adventures and how the system would use them. And that's kind of as a means to do this. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. In the description there, I'll put a link to the game so you guys can check it out. I think the whole game is like maybe 30, 40 pages long total. It's broken into 3 different books: the Player's Guide, the Dungeon Master's Guide, effectively, Game Master's Guide, and also a Monster and Treasure book. So let's take a look, first of all. Like I say, you've got these 2 books, and then you have a Monster book. Let's see, where's the Monster book? Creatures and Treasures. So where you have and you can right away see if you're somebody who's ever run 5th edition, we can see right away when we look at the creatures here, the basic stat block is kind of the same, but different. You've got hit points, you have ascending armor class, you've got your attacks with the bonus to hit and the damage. This skill thing we'll talk about, this weakness thing we'll talk about, and it has treasure type, just like old school games, right? We've got some motivation, we have their talents, we have, the weaknesses, and so on and so forth. So you're running a troll, you've got to use this really basic stat block if you want to run it really neatly. But you also have, if you want to run a troll from 5e, again, it's completely mechanically compatible. So let's take a look. What I'm going to do here is, instead of going through the whole system, like I said, I'm going to actually bring up this, which I bought a while back, and I've run a couple of these adventures. This is Uncaged. It's 25 original adventures for tiers 1 through 4, volume 2. I thought these were really fun adventures, and a lot of these are not they're like thinking adventures, so I really like them. And they focus on a bunch of different monsters, which I also love because you can pick by monsters, right? So we're going to go through one of these, and I'm going to show you how it will translate over using 5B. All right, so let's just pick one. Let's go with, let's see, this one. Okay, so this has All's Fair. It's written by Jess Waters, and it's got a succubus as the monster, which I love the way this is a whole other thing. So basically, you've got this whole background. Now let's take a look at how things work. I'm going to kind of roll in here, and we're getting into the adventure here. Okay, the statue. A successful DC intelligence investigation check of the statue reveals traces of red paint. In 5th edition, if you're not aware, you would roll the D20. You add your intelligence here, your investigation bonus if you're skilled in it. So how does that work in this game? Well, there's not all kinds of skills, thankfully. What you've got is a pretty simple system. Basically, your character has a skill bonus. It starts at +2 and it goes up and stuff. And what you do is you add that to anything that you're skilled in. So what you would do in this case, for instance, is you would go, okay, if we have a DC 10 intelligence test and you're not skilled, because I would say investigation is something that anybody can do. So we'll talk about if it's completely out of your class later, but you would roll a D20 and you'd add your intelligence. Easy enough. If your class, let's say, has a skill, so let's look over here at maybe the thief. Any tests involving reflexes, subtlety, and movement? No, not really. Any physical tests for fighters? We've got tests of religious knowledge for clerics, and for magic users, we've got tests of arcane knowledge. So this is not particularly arcane or any of that, so nobody has a skill in this, so everybody's just going to roll adding their intelligence bonus. All the bonuses track exactly with 5th edition, so if you've got whatever it is in 18, then you have +4, I think it is in 5th edition. Now we come down here, And we look at this one, a successful DC 20 intelligence religion check. Okay, so again, we go back to our cleric. Our cleric class has the skill in any tests of religious knowledge. So they would use their intelligence and also add their religion skill. It's very simple. And the other thing you can do here is you might be able to use your skill if you have a background trait. So in your background, you get to pick a primary trait, and which is something could be something really cool, like if you want to say, well, my character is a part demon character, so they can cast darkness. You might be able to do that once a day or something as your primary trait. Secondary traits, which you get a bunch of, are things like your background. So you might actually have a background in one of these things, like possibly you were a sculptor and you'd get a bonus on that other test that we did. So it's really loose, which I love, and it keeps things flowing. You basically have these traits that you can use, and you kind of, if they work, you get the skill bonus. If they don't, then you don't. Easy as that. Okay, so moving through this, again, we're just going to keep running into these things. This is very common in these kind of modules, which is the thing. Okay, and you might be saying, well, okay, so what do we do here? So we have this DC 10 intelligence check. How would you do that in a kind of your typical OSR game? Well, you would probably be like, well, you're searching, so roll a D6. If you get a 1 or maybe a 1 or a 2, you find it, which is cool. But what's nice and nuanced about some of the modern systems is that your abilities do help you. So here you're able to do that if you like that kind of system. I've definitely talked to plenty of people that don't love the fact that your intelligence or wisdom doesn't matter when you're searching. If you're one of those people, this game is probably good for you. Okay, so let's take a look at this monster here. We have this hag. So again, I'm going to walk through how this system will handle the monster. So again, armor class 17 is the same. Hit points, 91, the same. All the ability scores don't really matter. What we care about here is you can use these numbers exactly as they are, all these numbers here. But let's look at their spell casting. That's what I want to talk about. So they've got these 2 spells. And what's kind of cool about this system is it doesn't have spells. It's kind of a free-form magic system. And what we want to do is, let me jump to the magic user and I'll show you. When a magic user wants to cast a spell, they basically roll a d20. And depending on their level, okay, over here, and depending on their roll, which is out here, and this roll is modified by their skill, obviously, and their intelligence, I believe. And basically what you get is a range here. You see M, M, S, S. This stands for mundane, supernatural, awesome, legendary, epic, and godly. So this has this range, right? So let's start with going backwards. So what is hold person? Hold person basically is going to freeze a single person up, right? So if we look at the levels of power here, we go, okay, well, a supernatural is these spells can cast on a small number of targets in a contained area, have roughly the power of a typical person. Ongoing effects last a short time. Think about it. If you could grab somebody and hold them, right? That's like a hold person spell. So this is a supernatural level of spell. So the hag, if they want to cast their hold person, is going to roll a d20. They're going to add 6 to it. And the reason why I have 6 is because it's +6 to hit with spell attacks. So that's how I'm going to translate that. So they roll a d20 rather. They add 6 to it. Let's say they get an 8 plus 6 is 14. We look over here on the chart. They are a challenge level 7, so we'll just count them as a 7th level caster. So they fall into here. So with an 18, that's here, S, supernatural. They're able to do it. If they rolled lower, but still got better than a 10, they'd do a mundane effect. A mundane effect might, instead of holding the person, it might slow them. Now, the saving throw is equal, much like DCC, it's equal to the roll that you make. So you would still want to roll really high because you get better effects and it's harder to save versus them. Nice and simple. You could do it on the fly like I just did, or if you're going to run a module, you can just quickly look and make notes of what you think the spells would be. But again, I don't think that most people need to worry about that. They can also cast Ray of Frost, same thing. They're going to roll a d20. They're going to add 6 to their roll. Depending on their roll is basically going to be how much damage it does, because we can look here. And again, if we look under this 5th to 8th level, let's say they roll a 20, plus 6 is 26. So we look at between 25, that's an awesome effect, and we see 41. That's the damage. Simple as that, right? That's potential damage. You could probably figure out a way to dice it, but you could just use that damage, nice and easy. So the spellcasting is really smooth, I think, and I love an open-ended spellcasting system. I am not a huge fan of having spell slots and rolling to cast with, like, if you roll a 1, it's a bad effect. If you roll less, it just doesn't work. I like a scale. It's one of the reasons why I like DCC, which this kind of reminds me of, is because not only is the roll important to make sure the spell goes off, but it matters how much the spell affects. The spell is more powerful if you roll high, less powerful if you roll low, and your stats and your skill level affect that roll. So it's nice and clean and simple. I really like it. So this is something that I could port over into any system, really. You could use this for NPCs if you don't want to use it for your standard player characters. You want to create some kind of new kind of spellcaster in a BX game, like some kind of NPC spellcaster. Just port this system over. Nice and easy. Combat, right, is nice and simple. You basically roll a d20. You're trying to hit their armor class. You add your either, if you're skilled, you add your skill. So let's say you're a fighter and you're using a weapon you're skilled in. You would add your skill to it. If you look at a magic user, they're not skilled in any weapons, which means they won't add their skill bonus when they're attacking, right? I also kind of like the fact that it kind of implies, doesn't straight up say, that anybody can wear any armor, but if you're not skilled in it, you don't get the armor benefit. So like if you just want to, you're a magic user, you just want to throw plate mail on just to carry it or because it's there, maybe to look like a fighter, you can do it. I know in some OSR systems, it kind of says magic users can't wear armor and it affects your magic. It doesn't say that here as far as I can tell. It just basically says that. So it's up to the table to decide how these things work. And I love that. That gives it that OSR style, which is super fun. So that's kind of how you translate it. You see how easy it is. Let me just run through a couple other things I really am noticing I like in this game. Please note that I've only read it. I haven't actually played it yet, but from what I can tell, a lot of this stuff will be fun at the table. This spellcasting system, as I said, I'm definitely going to try for NPCs in my OD&D game, so I'll let you know how that works out. All right, so a lot of things say they're old school, but what are some elements old school that I like that this game has? We're going to jump into the Game Master's book for this one. What we get here is a procedure. Procedural play is a hallmark, I think, of OSR and old school games. You have non-balanced encounters with telegraphing. Yes, I love that. You've got difficulty classes, which is not old school, but again, they're blending, right? You've got disposition, which is basically a reaction roll. You've got morale, again, which is a very old school trait. And then we have, some randomness here for the prayers if you're not sure how you want to adjudicate them. You've got that bit of advice here, but not strict rules. The rules are the guidelines. And one of my favorite parts of this whole game is all the examples. You can read through all these examples, you'll know exactly how to play the game. But let's look at each of the classes, because I think I like how there's only 4 classes. So notice there's no species or whatever, right? That would be a primary trait. So let's go back here again to the background. Primary trait represents your character's upbringing or how they spend a large portion of their life. It affects their ability scores. And when you look at examples, you can say, I spent my childhood working in a family farm. Add 2 to your strength, 1 to your con. But you could also put them using your secondary traits. You could say, I was born under a lucky star. Whenever your character's life is in grave danger, they can roll with advantage, right? I traded my soul for a bit of power. You can cast 1 spell. So you can kind of create all of your characters. And this is where you'll create your heritage if you want. You'll say, well, the reason why I can see in the dark is because I have Fey blood. So that's kind of, you'd use it as one of your secondary or primary traits. These talents, you can do talents or powers. And again, nice and simple. The idea here is it's more narrative. You can kind of create a little bit of a backstory custom to your character, and it also gives them specific powers they can use, which I think is really fun. So let's take a look at the cleric. Tells you what a cleric is, it tells you their hit dice, it tells you their talent. So again, wisdom and charisma saving throws, simple weapons, all armor, any tests of religious knowledge. That means all of those things, they add their +2 at first level, but they add their skill bonus too, right? Anything else? They don't. Deity. From what being do you draw their power? Name them, pick a domain their power is associated with, specific way in which they're worshipped. In other words, you make up your own gods that you want to worship, which I like because that's exactly what I do in my OSR games. And I love about OD&D, well, until I came up with that last book, you just pick whatever you like BX, right? There's no deities in BX. You just make something up, which I love. Okay, so the way the cleric's power works is really cool. This, again, reminds me a little bit of DCC. You have a base DC, right? You roll d20. You have a base DC of a 13 wisdom check and with the skill bonus, right? So if you put a decent, score in wisdom, let's say you had +2 in wisdom, and you've got a +2 skill bonus, you'd roll a d20 +4. You're trying to get a 13. If you do, the god will basically help you. There's no set spells. You tell them what you want, and then the GM interprets it. So, for instance, they have some examples, and I just want to show you the examples so you can get a feel for it. I light a candle in prayer to Lux, god of light. I call out, Lux, I am lost in this maze. Please aid me. And then they roll and they succeed. GM, in answer to your prayer, Lux manifests a tiny ball of light that hovers in the air before you. Then it zips off down the hallway. You're not sure if it's leading you out of the maze, but you better run. I love that, right? It's very much in the moment, making up a result based on what the players are doing in the role play. Super fun. Because I've definitely seen people talk about clerics in many different ways, and they become heal bots, or people don't think they fit into the world because of the origins of the cleric. But in this way, you can make stuff that really, really works for your world. Now, the way that you're probably going, that's really powerful. Well, every time you successfully are able to have a prayer work for you, you add 1 to the DC until basically you reach the end of the day and you rest and whatever. So it becomes more difficult to cast spells the more you do, which again, I think is pretty cool. You keep bothering your deity too much, they're going to stop responding. Another thing I kind of like here is the prayers for healing work automatically. So you don't have to bother rolling for that and figuring that out. It just automatically works. But again, it's going to raise that DC up. If the DC reaches 20 or more, then the healing doesn't automatically work. So if you use the healing too much, you're going to basically push that number up, which is why I like it, because players are definitely going to go, I'm just going to keep healing people. I'm going to keep healing people. But at a certain point, when your DC gets to 17 or 18, you're going to be like, oh man, I probably shouldn't have just been healing everybody for 3 hit points here, 2 hit points there. Maybe I should be more conservative. It creates an intelligent choice the players have to make, which I really like. Now let's just quickly look at leveling up. Okay, every time you level up, you roll more hit points and you take an option. So basically at second level, you increase an ability score. Third level, you increase the ability score. Fourth level, you increase your skill bonus and add a secondary trait. Fifth level, you add, you get additional healing with the prayer. Once you've taken all of them, you just start over. Again, you don't have to have 20 levels figured out. You just keep working your way through the chart. Everybody uses the same experience points in this, like 5e. So again, it feels comfortable there. You can do XP for gold or milestones. That's all in the GM book. So it's very simple, right? Magic users are the same. They pick a couple of schools. They can cast spells, and I already went over the spell casting. The other thing that's kind of cool here is that they do care about encumbrance, because that's a big deal, right? A lot of times people blow off encumbrance, which I don't like. I like to use encumbrance. It makes it feel more old school. They use a slot system. Everybody has 10 slots. Some items take more slots or less slots. Easy as that. It basically says those are basically slots like in your backpack and pouches and stuff. So you can carry more than that. But if you do, you'll start having disadvantage on stuff because you're carrying stuff in your hands. You've got a whole list of equipment you can buy out here. There's a quick example of play, and there we are. 8 pages done in the player's book. Nice and simple. This is what I'm really liking about this game. A lot of times I'll see games and they'll say, this is like an old school game. And it'll basically just be the mechanics of 5e or similar with 1 or 2 things changed. This is really a fresh look at it. You've got roll for spellcasting, but with a range like DCC. You've got slot-based inventory, which you get in a lot of OSR games. You've got just 4 basic classes, which is very nice. Then it has some stuff that's not typically OSR, but that I really love. You've got effectively background skills that give you your main and traits that give you your main, quote, powers. I really like that because it keeps it open-ended. I often talk about how I'd much prefer a career versus a skill tree. I like just to say, I'm a pirate, I can do all the piratey stuff. This is exactly what you get in this game. There's so much stuff out there that's compatible with 5th edition that I think this is a good system to have just when you want to run that. You might like to run OD&D like I do or BX, and that's cool, and you can definitely take time to translate this over, but if you want to run a one-shot or something, this is the system I'd probably choose for it. You may find you love the system and run whole campaigns, but if you want to run through, I don't know if it'd really be a one-shot, but if I want to run through this City of Gaxmore, which is probably, 12, 15 sessions of play, this would be a great system to do it in because I don't have to translate anything. I can literally go through the book, and when I enter into an encounter, I can just look at it and it works. So I definitely think it's something worth looking at. Let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, there'll be a link to it in the description. I want to thank Of course, Dank Dungeons for sponsoring this video. Thank you. Very nice of you to do that. It's a pretty cool system. I'm going to try to play it a little bit more, and I'll probably mention it more in the blog or in the Discord as I get a chance to actually play it. It'll be available as soon as this video comes out, so check the description below for the link. Also in the description is going to be a link to my Discord server, so join up over there. Join the conversation, always fun. A link to my Patreon if you want to support the channel, and I'll talk to you soon.